They said a man must love his wife. But what happens when love becomes possession? To the world, the perfect husband.
Love can build a home or burn it to ashes.
Ken's apartment was a masterpiece of precision. The tiles shone like polished glass, reflecting the faint glow of the morning light. Every shoe was perfectly aligned, every shirt pressed to perfection, and every teaspoon nestled in its designated spot. The air was crisp and clean, and the scent of citrus wafted through the air, evoking a sense of serenity. But beneath the surface, Ken's need for order bordered on obsession. He had a knack for neatness, a trait that had earned him the nickname Mr. Perfect among his friends and colleagues. Women, however, often found it challenging to keep up with his impossibly high standards. Ken's personality was strict and disciplined, leaving little room for error or imperfection. His apartment was a reflection of his inner world, controlled, precise, and unyielding. As he arrived home late from the refinery, his quiet swagger spoke of confidence and authority. At 35, he was a man who commanded respect, with a reputation for being precise, efficient, and brutally honest. His teams delivered, and he was known as Mr. Perfect at the multinational oil company where he worked. To him, correctness was a state of being, and he lived by its principles. There were reasons Ken is this way. He grew up in a house where love was given in the shape of rules. His father was an iron man, early to speak, quicker to punish. His mother moved like a shadow around him, minimizing noise, always apologetic. The family table had three rules: be silent at the wrong time, be better than others, and never be messy. From watching his father speak to his mother with a commanding tone and in a demeaning way, Ken learned that control equals safety. He internalized a doctrine: the world is fixed and fragile, disorder must be punished. From that childhood, he built armor. He studied, he worked, he bought the house, the car, and the respect. But the armor turned into a law, not just order, but obedience. Ken's idea for marriage starts to look less like a partnership and more like a household manual, written by him, signed by her. So when he told his sister one night, "I want a wife who knows her place," he meant neat, quiet, unquestioning. No maids, no machines, just her hands, he added, his words falling like an ultimatum. As Ken approached his late 30s, his parents began to pressure him about marriage, their expectations growing more urgent with each passing day. As the only son, he felt the weight of tradition and family obligations. But Ken wasn't against the idea of marriage. He simply hadn't found the right woman yet. In his mind, the perfect wife would be submissive, quiet, and willing to fit into his carefully structured world. His past relationships had been a series of disappointments, with each girlfriend failing to meet his high standards. "She's not a good girl," or "she's not wife material," he'd say, his mind already made up. The truth was, he broke up with them for not following his rules, for not being the perfect partner he had envisioned. And so, Ken continued his search, holding out for a woman who would fit perfectly into his predetermined mold. Glory hailed from a small town 3 hours away from Ken's village, where tradition and old values ran deep. She embodied gentleness, a quality that wasn't born out of naivety, but out of necessity. Growing up, she'd learned to survive by being soft-spoken and submissive, with a small voice and smaller movements. Her mother had taught her that a woman's role was to be subservient, and that enduring in silence was key to sustaining a marriage. In her community, Glory was considered a good daughter, humble, patient, and loyal. When Ken's parents visited the village during a long holiday, they were immediately taken with Glory's demure demeanor and willingness to please. They admired how hardworking she is and how she braids kids' hair with tenderness at dawn. Her gentle movements was music to their ears. Her silence was a virtue to them, and they appreciated that she knew her place. To them, she seemed safe. When Ken saw her at his parents' compound for their scheduled meeting, he did what came naturally. He evaluated, categorized, and decided. Glory's eyes lowered, and she curtsied with a submissiveness that looked almost like surrender. For Ken, it was perfection. He proposed within months. And Glory accepted, her worldview rooted in the belief that marriage was a badge of honor, a symbol of dignity and elevation. Before the wedding, Ken laid down his rules with the same detached precision he used for project specifications. You'll have to wake up as early as 4 a.m. to prepare my breakfast before I leave for work. You have to cook fresh meals every day. I don't like eating leftovers or repeating food. No house help, no lazing around in the house. My house must be clean all the time. You'll follow my rules. Glory nodded, her conviction in the importance of yielding in marriage unwavering. You'll have a male child first, he added, and she tried, her youth, devotion, and obedience driving her. The traditional marriage came, small and beautiful. The photos were perfectly taken. The neighbors offered congratulations, and in the pictures, Glory's smile was small yet perfect. Pregnant and radiant Glory moves into the Ken's perfect apartment. The first months are a practice in routine. She wakes at 4 a.m., opens the kitchen, and prepares Ken's breakfast, every detail meticulously attended to. She does the house chores like her life depended on it, irons until her fingers ache. He praises her when she follows the rules. Praise becomes the currency that keeps her going. But praise is not warmth. Ken's thank you is the kind of acknowledgement that sounds like a checkbox being ticked. He's distant, precise. He likes her physical labor and her silence, but showed little patience for her discomfort. When Glory's back hurts from standing and cooking all day, Ken sighs. You should be stronger. There are many pregnant women out there hawking on the street to feed their families, he says. When she suggested hiring a cleaner to ease her workload, he dismissed the idea. I didn't marry you to pay for labor. You are here to take care of the house, he replies, as if she's a pregnant robot. When Ken is out with his friends, he transformed into Mr. Perfect, boasting about his expectations of women. Over drinks, he'd argue that women should be submissive, loyal, and obedient, that they shouldn't speak when men were talking. According to him, a man was the head, and women were meant to follow. He'd brag about his wife's domestic prowess, treating her more like a servant than a partner. My wife knows her place, he'd say, implying that Glory was there to cater to his every need. When he came home and found fault with the house chores or Glory's exhaustion, he would berate her, reminding her of the gutters she came from and the luxury he had provided. I'm the one who took you out of the village and gave you a better life, he would say, as if that gave him carte blanche to dictate her every move. His words were laced with a sense of ownership, and Glory started losing self-esteem in the marriage. Glory shrunk into herself, suffocating under the weight of rules in her marriage. She tried to manage the unspoken grief that ate at her soul. When she finally gave birth to their first child, a boy, Ken's face lit up with pride as he patted the baby's back. He'll be clean, disciplined, just like me, he declared, his words dripping with an almost sinister certainty, as if goodness could be engineered. Glory's fingers trembled with a suppressed urge to speak, to articulate the raw emotion that swelled within her as she gazed at the newborn son. But the silence she'd been conditioned to observe felt oppressive, a physical barrier that choked the words back into her throat. Glory's second pregnancy was overshadowed with fear, a creeping sense of uncertainty that lingered at the edges. The doctors at the prenatal clinic warned her about the risks, reminding her that her previous births had been difficult. Rest, avoid heavy lifting, and no more sweeping with your belly bent forward, they cautioned. The midwife's words were firm. You must sit, rest, and stay hydrated. But Ken wouldn't hear of it. In his mind, the standard held, his mother had worn no baby bump like a badge of weakness. His sister had cooked and worked through her pregnancies. For him, hard work was a moral measure, a test of character. Pregnancy isn't a bed of silk, he snapped, when Glory mentioned the doctor's orders. A woman's work continues even with the baby inside. Your mother worked, my mother worked. That's how women are. Glory tried to reason with him, but Ken wasn't interested. Instead, he continued to scrutinize her every move, lashing out on each mistake. When Glory couldn't finish the chores, he'd label her lazy, weak, and unfit. Those words became a constant refrain, echoing in Glory's and settling in her chest like a weight. Ken accompanied Glory to the doctor's appointment, his presence a stark contrast to the concern etched on the doctor's face. You must rest now, the doctor urged, his tone firm but laced with a warning. If the baby is large, we may need to consider a C-section. Ken's reaction was immediate and loud. The words C-section felt like an abomination, a personal indictment of Glory's womanhood. No, he said firmly, when the doctor repeated the warning. We're not doing it. We trust God and nature. His tone brooked no argument, as if his opinion was the only one that mattered. My wife will give birth like a woman is supposed to give birth, he declared, his words dripping with a misguided sense of tradition. He didn't ask questions, didn't seek clarification. He simply decided his arrogance and conviction, silencing any opinion. Glory, meanwhile, tried to comply, stopping her heavy sweeping, but still expected to cook and wash by hand. She went to bed exhausted, her voice worn out from a day of unrelenting labor. The doctor's appointment became a distant memory, a calendar date they both ignored as they went about their routine. When a woman's body and her husband's conviction collide, the body usually bears the brunt. During a long labor night, Glory struggles. The midwife who was with her at the hospital later says the baby was large, the labor prolonged, and the placenta showed signs of distress. But Ken had refused the first offer of operative delivery earlier in the day. Push, the nurse had told Glory. And she had. She pushed until she had nothing left. By morning, the doctors delivered the news that shattered her world. The baby had died in utero. The word stillbirth is clinical, but in their little apartment, it becomes a splinter that drives between Glory's ribs. She collapses into mourning that is both physical and spiritual. Ken's first reaction was not grief, but anger. He was consumed by rage, not just because their child had died, but because the outcome threatened his self-image. If his wife couldn't push out a baby like a woman is supposed to, then she's not fit. His anger found a target in Glory, and he lashed out. You are lazy, he snapped at her, the words cutting deep on the same day they'd walked out of the hospital. If you had followed my instructions, this wouldn't have happened. For Glory, the pain of loss was compounded by accusation. She had trusted, obeyed, and lost. Her mourning became a hollow ache that couldn't be filled with apologies or excuses. Grief often unlocks hidden doors. Glory, once quiet and reserved, found solace in sharing her pain. In the stillness of the night, she turned to her phone and wrote. Her first post was a poignant confession. We lost our baby. I am broken. She hesitated, then shared it with the world. What followed was a night of connection with strangers, women who responded with their own stories of loss, of the risks and fears that come with childbearing. Glory read their words, tears streaming down her face, and began to respond. The quiet girl, who once feared Ken's wrath, discovered the power of truth-telling on the internet. She went live on social media, voicing her pain, loss, and endurance, and sharing the reality of her treatment at Ken's hands. Within hours, her phone was flooded with notifications from all social media platforms. People responded in a chorus of support. You're not alone. Leave him. You deserve care. Women reposted her video, sent money for therapy, and offered shelter. The comments poured in, a wave of warmth and solidarity. Glory's voice, soft but forceful, resonated with others. She spoke about her pregnancy, her fears, and the doctor's advice that was ignored. Her words were raw and honest, a testament to her pain and resilience. Within days, her videos went viral. Local pages picked them up and women tagged their friends and family. Men were called out and Ken's name and pictures was dragged into the spotlight. This man's name is Ken, one comment read. He's not alone in thinking this way. Before long, Ken's name and pictures were everywhere, shattering his Mr. Perfect image and exposing him to shame. Ken's world crumbled when he discovered the videos. Furious, he called Glory naive in messages, demanding she take the videos down. She refused, a response a testament to her newfound strength. They are my truth. Maybe then another woman won't go through this. The backlash was fast. Ken's company noticed, and the company's PR team sprang into action. Complaints piled up, and HR intervened, citing domestic instability affecting work conduct. A leaked private rant at the bar about lazy women sealed Ken's fate. He was called in for a meeting that reeked of consequences. Ken tried to deflect, arguing his right to personal opinion, but the company stood firm. Reputational risk mattered. The wave of external outrage, hashtags, women's groups, and a national lifestyle site sealed his termination. When Ken returned home, Glory was gone, taking their son with her. She had received a proposal to speak at a women's conference, and her voice was finally being heard. Ken's immaculately ordered life was crumbling. Losing his job, he lost the ground he stood on. For the first time in years, his orders were met with indifference. He turned to drink, but it couldn't restore the image he had lost. He reached out to colleagues, but they kept their distance, unwilling to be associated with a man whose name was trending for all the wrong reasons. After wallowing in self-pity, Ken finally sought counseling. At first, it was to heal the inner child trauma of his upbringing. But in the therapist's calm and non-judgmental space, Ken faced his childhood for the first time. He spoke about the father who ruled with an iron fist and the mother who submitted. He began to understand the architecture of his perfectionism. The therapist's question still resonated with him. Who did you choose to be so you would never be hurt again? He had never been asked that. For the first time, Ken listened with an open heart. Ken isolated himself to heal, and eventually he apologized publicly, his words clumsy but sincere. I was wrong. I treated my wife like a possession. I built a prison. Some critics called it PR. Others saw it as a genuine start to change. Ken volunteered at a shelter for young men, listening to mothers speak and learning to stay silent. When a young father cried and confessed to shouting at his wife, Ken felt the burn of honesty. Through therapy, Ken became genuinely remorseful. He apologized to Glory not as her master, but as her husband. At first, she was distant, her wounds still fresh. But through counseling and faith, she forgave him. She saw his willingness to change. Ken and Glory learned to rebuild slowly. Through therapy, laughter, and shared faith, they rediscovered friendship, going on evening walks, dinner dates, and family fun time. Ken realized that Glory's glow came not from submission, but from peace. He finally understood that love was not control. It was mutual respect. It was choosing to grow together, not rule alone. And for the first time in his life, Ken didn't just have a wife, he had a partner. Moral lesson. The character of Glory isn't meant to be consistent. She represents women from every race, every culture, every corner of the world. If you are going through emotional, mental, or physical abuse in your marriage, this is your sign to speak out and ask for help. Silence is not strength. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be free. For every Glory out there, I see you. I believe in you. And I'm wishing you healing, peace, and courage. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment for more interesting stories.